afternoon, everybody. This is Carrie Balcom at American Grass-Fed, and we are going to discuss labeling of the meat in the United States today and the mislabeling of meat. And we've got some really great experts here and people that really know what they're talking about. And we're going to do this through the American Grass-Fed Grazing Hell podcast system, and it'll be recorded for you all to see later. I'll let everybody introduce themselves. I'm Carrie Balcom. I'm the executive director of the American Grass-Fed Association, and we've been around since 2003. And we set standards for pasture-based and grass-fed production in the United States, all species. And we're very pleased to have these folks join us today. And we're going to dive into it and have just a great conversation about what we know, what we don't know, and where we want to go with it. So we can do it alphabetically, or Greg, you want to go ahead first and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good afternoon, Carrie. Great to be here. Greg Gunthorpe. I'm an artisanal farmer and processor in Northeast Indiana. We raise pasture pigs, pasture poultry, and grass-fed lambs on our operation. We have about 275 acres in Northeast Indiana, and then we graze about 1,000 acres of utility-scale solar with sheep in North Central Indiana. Glad to be here today. We have a USDA-inspected processing plant on the farm, and we direct market primarily to upscale restaurants, food service institutions. You can find our product at O'Hare Airport, Disney, Caesar's Palace, and quite a few of the nicer restaurants here within our region, which is Chicago, Indianapolis, Detroit. We're about centrally located. So thanks for the invitation.
Austin?
Yeah, I'm Austin Furrick. I'm the author of the book, Barron's Money, Power, and the Corruption of America's Food System. And I am a proud buyer of Greg's turkeys for Thanksgiving. I have a great deal with my mother-in-law. I buy the bird, she cooks it, and I get the leftovers.
We were introduced to Austin. He's been around for a long time, and he's part of open markets in DC, and he's been doing policy for a long time, and he's downplaying his credentials here. But his book is out now, and it's called Barron's, and I suggest to everybody that can get it, read it. Or is the audiobook out yet, Austin?
Yep, the audiobook and the paperback comes out in early September.
And we're pleased that you decided to join us today, so thank you. And then we have Mr. Lewis.
Hi, thank you, Carrie. Alan Lewis. I'm with Natural Grocers. And because so few people have heard of us and on the coast, we have 170 stores in 21 states, mostly west of the Mississippi. And I think I was invited today because we've been around for 70 years and we've been forced to set and enforce and certify our own standards in so many food categories because of the confusion that's been created and sometimes the intentional obfuscation that happens. So I'm really glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to start. AGA was formed because the USDA was going to allow a grass-fed label claim. They were going to be able to feed 20% grain, confine, give them antibiotics and hormones, and label grass-fed. And quite frankly, we worked with them for about 5.5 years to get a good quality standard. And the standard that they came up with was not what we thought and what consumers thought they were getting when they said grass-fed. So we've started our own third-party certified program. Even today, in today's market, I call it grass washing. The grass-fed label is on all kinds of products that, in my opinion, that shouldn't be on. And we're trying to help the consumer traverse that landscape. Greg and Alan, we're all kind of policy wonks, but we work with USDA. Austin is too. In 2022, we got product of the USA passed, and we'll get into that a little bit by executive order, but we want to get into the labeling and the mislabeling right now. And Greg, we're going to let you run off on and start with that one. We're going to cover as much as we can and what to look for.
Let me first start off and tell a little bit about our story really quick, because I think it fits right into this. My family's raised pastured pigs, sold them onto the commodity market. I'm at least a fourth generation pasture pig farmer, but the commodity market crashed in '98. And so I just started to see that the whole farm to table movement was barely starting in the United States. Guys like Bill Nyman and John Jameson were already selling to some restaurants. Alice Waters was buying some stuff at Shape and Ease from him. John was selling into Watergate and a few places into New York. And so we decided we were going to get our pigs processed and do the same thing. And it really gained traction. Had we filled the paperwork out in 2011, our farm would have made the Inc. 5000 list as one of the fastest growing independent companies in the whole United States. But around about 2015, I feel like we woke the big guys up. And my argument is that every single niche label that we've created as niche producers, the big guys have co-opted those and have something at retail that implies that they're doing what we're doing, but they're not really. And grass-fed beef is one of the most egregious. About 85% of domestic labeled grass-fed beef in the grocery stores is actually foreign production, put in a bag here. The organic label has been bastardized. The organic milk, there are now huge confinement organic operations that don't come anywhere close to meeting the 30% dry matter for grazing requirement that the animals actually harvest. Pasture as cows is what nature intended them. There's free roaming in bird production. All broilers are free roaming inside of a confinement barn. There's gestation crate free in pigs, but the big producers only put them in the gestation crates long enough to get them bred so that, you can end up with 3,000 crates on a 6,000 sow farm. Natural means nothing. The list goes on and on. The worst, and the one that USDA is supposedly, barring some massive change, will be corrected here in January 2026. And the place that I believe that USDA should have started on fixing this is that Product of USA, where you can bring a foreign product into the United States, repackage it here, and then label it as Product of USA. That is probably the most egregious for sure. But almost all of these labels in the retail now are misleading, if not flat out fraudulent. And it makes it just about impossible for the smallest ideal producers to fit into wholesale at either the food service or to retailers.
Austin, you did your book in Barron's. You delved into the big meat packers, and Greg alluded to the big guys. And if you want to just expound on that a little bit, and how they co-opted the market and captured the market.
Yeah, I mean, the example that came to my mind right away was, Greg, what were those meat stores called that JBS is opening on the East Coast right now?
Oh man, I sent you the link to that.
Yeah,
I
can look it up later, but they're building all these fake local meat stores across the East Coast where people think they're paying a premium to buy local meat and it's just JBS products. And I use that example because nothing's going to change until we actually do some old-fashioned trust busting. I mean, JBS is the closest thing we have in America to a criminal organization, which is saying a lot given this moment. But they pled guilty to bribing 1,800 politicians. I mean, we're not talking campaign. They went to jail. Yeah. And then on top of it, allegedly, part of their plea bargain was they wore a wire bribing the president of Brazil, and allegedly, on the day the charges were announced, they engaged in insider trading on their plea bargain. This company is also alleged to bribe meat inspectors to employ children. To think that they're not going to try to co-opt to undermine anything that challenges them is just, it's beyond naive. And what makes me the angriest about this whole Made in the USA debate is wars were fought and won, and the time it takes to make these labels mean something. To me, this is the best example of an awful mix of corruption and incompetency. It is unacceptable. And then right now we're having in the meat markets, the beef markets, a flood of Brazilian beef. It's 3x in just the last year alone. And people don't know that. I just think we got to do some trust busting in order to make these labels mean something, because it feels like every time we make a new label, the meat packers find a way to corrupt USDA and undermine the label. And so it just becomes this constant cat and mouse, and we need to deal with the core issue here.
Austin, we have a lot to talk about today, but I can't help myself. I got to add on to that, which is, what's the role of the big concentrated retail and food service barons in this collusion? Alleged collusion. Let's not get you into trouble, because they can't do it alone, right?
Yep. No, it's it might have been you, Alan, that told me this phrase: big boys like to run with big boys. When you have a Walmart, you make a JBS, is they want some negotiating power, and here's the thing, they don't care. They just want the label. They want the premium product. They're not going to research their supply chain. As long as you pretend to do something, that's all they care about. I hate to ask this, but is there any label you trust anymore when you walk into the store? Either of you guys?
Natural grocers.
But like,
Yeah.
is there a label you see on a package that you still trust?
American Grass Fed Association. And I think that in general, Austin, you're seeing less of those because, as retail continues to consolidate, more of those brands that are actually buying directly from independent farms that are raising them correctly just keep getting pushed out.
Yeah. And like Walmart doesn't want to deal with, they want one supplier to do 4,000 stores. They don't want someone that can only do 4 stores.
Right.
The other way to answer that, Austin, is that we know HEA and a number of other seals and certifications really, really well, but it's always trust but verify.
Yep.
We go to the producer's land, talk to the producers, videotape, do measurements, and make sure that what we're representing to our consumers is, in fact, what we believe it is. And when Greg talks about the plethora of suspect certifications, that's the problem. We can't allow consumers to believe that something is of one quality when it's really of a very different, lower quality.
I gotta tell you guys a quick story is I got, I'll never forget this. I was doing a book talk in a small town in Iowa last spring, and I got chewed out because I gave my honest opinion of the organic label. And it was by a farmer because they're like, you're right, but don't tell consumers this yet because like I'm barely getting by, and the naiveness that some of them still have helps me with my premium. And so like, but this farmer told me is like, we just got to fix the labels. And it's hard because like you want to have an honest conversation and let people know there's a lot. Like me, I didn't know 85% of grass fed is foreign imports. I kind of assumed it, to be honest with you, but that's really scary where we don't, there's been so much work to make some of these labels mean something to let consumers know, but at the same time too, avoiding an honest conversation, you're letting all these shenanigans go on. I mean, there's just such an, like, bigger point I guess I'm rambling about is the failure of USDA to do a basic level job.
Greg and I have been in lots of meetings with agricultural marketing services and USDA and stuff. And Food Safety Inspection Service, which does all the label criteria, doesn't have any auditors to go out and inspect farms for truth in labeling. And so it's all done by affidavit, and they have 14 employees to oversee. I think it's 750,000 labels every year. So they get paperwork in, they stamp it, and it goes out, and it either says grass fed or it says natural or it says no antibiotics or whatever. It's what's on the paperwork. And that's very troubling to us. We tried desperately to change that, and we just haven't been able to yet. And I say this for meats, grass fed or pasture based, for fruits and vegetables, organic, because you can control inputs, and that makes it pretty simple. Greg, you were certified organic for quite some time, weren't you?
We were certified organic for about 15 years, and we gave it up a little bit after COVID because I was naive and believed that at some point we'd sell some certified organic poultry. And I also believed that we'd end up joining the live pool for pigs with Organic Valley. And Organic Valley's live pig pool for organic pigs went away. And the organic poultry market, the big players in conventional poultry are the exact same big players in organic poultry. In organic poultry, the only difference is that they're on organic feed. There's just about legitimately no other difference. So, little guys can't compete in either one of those. And organic pork in the U.S. is controlled mostly by one Canadian company that sends most of the organic pork into the United States. So that's not a legitimate market for the little guy either. It's kind of unfortunate. I actually argued quite a bit when USDA was going to own the organic word. And I told people that I said this will end up being a race to the bottom for the cheapest sourcing of organic products from all over the globe for the big retailers. And I wish that I was wrong, but what ended up happening. So,
I spend a good part of my work week reinforcing organic standards, trying to tighten them up, trying to get better enforcement, and dealing with the question that Austin just made me very uncomfortable by raising. But if I don't keep my consumers' confidence organic with transparent information and factual information, then my business model falls apart as an organic and natural grocer. So it's pretty painful, but that's why we spend so much time on that issue, Austin. If you want some salt and lemon for that, make sure it's organic salt.
Let's delve into the offshore pork and who owns the majority of the pork in the United States. Austin, you want to take that one, and you and Greg?
I mean, I think that's one of the scariest things right now. People get weird talking about it too, especially on the left. I'm a big believer in food sovereignty. The country should be able to feed itself. And I think meat, it's really scary because they're not only foreign meat packers, these are foreign backed state monopolies. So it's like, I don't want to feel sorry for Tyson's, but you're not competing fairly against a state backed monopoly. So in hogs, we have the WH group of China, which, I mean, China's a fascist country. I think it's just scary. I mean, they're willing to lock their own people in these hog facilities. They put their own people in concentration camps. And then a lot of the beef industry is owned by Brazilian corporations. I don't know. I think that's really unnerving. And to me, the bigger thing here is actually the checkoffs. So also WH Group is the largest owner of hogs in America. They own 1 in 5 hogs. So they're largest parents of the pork checkoff. And so really, first of all, that means the pork checkoff is really the voice of the slaughterhouse, not the hog farmer. And number 2, it's really the voice of a Chinese multinational.
You want to explain for consumers what the checkoff is?
Yes, thank you for asking that. I always forget we're a bunch of nerds here, but checkoffs, I don't think anything meaningful will change in the food system until we deal with the checkoffs. Here's the thing. It's like a good example in the food system it had good intentions. It goes back to the Depression, started in Florida. Citrus farmers agreed. They literally checked the box. They paid into a pot of money. Drink more Florida orange juice. It's a great thing. There's like 25 of them to this day. You have a Christmas tree, you have a popcorn. They're the things at the fair that hand you free samples. Here's the thing. Meat and dairy are in a league of their own, especially dairy. Dairy alone is a $600 million pot of money. And to me, they realized that whole got milk thing didn't work because the whole goal was to essentially get you to buy more. And as this farm bill shifted from overproducing a few things and getting you to stimulate to buy more cheese, they realized that wasn't working. So what you're seeing now is a lot of the checkoff money. It's financing a lot of the junk science like ethanol on airplanes, dumb crap like that. But also it's just the revolving door at USDA. I mean, Tom Vilsack to me is like when I read my meat chapter of my book, JBS is just a child that's never been punished. Where my anger is at Vilsack, it's just like this whole conversation we're having is one of the most bipartisan things in America right now. And not only did he not do anything, he made this stuff worse because he was an industrial dairy lobbyist working for the checkoff in between administrations. And everything he did was the sign of a man that wanted to be a lobbyist again. This is a very Iowa thing, but like there's that musical, The Music Man. He's Harold Hill. He'll tell you what you want to hear. He's a snake oils guy. You know, like Alan, thank you for laughing at that joke. I use that joke all the time.
Oh, Zach.
Thank you. But shapoopy. That joke doesn't work on the coast, but so that's where my anger is. It's really scary that we have these foreign meat entities and the checkoffs are like in bed with them. All the political appointees at USDA seem to recycle in between the two. The checkoffs just have so much money. I mean, there's just so much open corruption with these things. Alan Giebert has done a ton of writing and research on this. He's a columnist, and it's just a classic story. When there's no oversight, you're just asking for trouble, and that's what's happened here.
So we haven't answered Carrie's question, and I'll just tell everyone, the listeners, that the checkoff requires someone like Greg Gunthorpe, mandatory to throw money into the pork checkoff, and the pork checkoff then uses that money against Greg's interests to support the largest producers, often with activities that are not legally allowed, such as lobbying Congress. And there are 12, 15 different checkoffs. The beef, pork, milk, and eggs, I think, are some of the most common ones. But they do not work in the interest of the producers that the 4 of us would recognize as those with the most integrity.
I would just add, we've paid 0.25% to 0.45% since my family, and me personally, since 1994, but started in 1986. People would recognize Pork the Other White Meat campaign. Nothing. My dad hasn't owned a pig since 1994. He still gets pissed off when he hears that. Pigs that are raised correctly and that are a breed that aren't just a land race, maternal line, bred to something else, isn't a white meat anyways. Pork should have some flavor. And I'd actually argue just every single thing they've done has been against my best interest. I've personally paid for advertising that tells everybody we should feed the world with pigs inside barns. Concentration is great. A pig should be a white meat. Pork should compete with chicken rather than beef. It should be flavorless. And we've literally paid to ruin pork demand. Right now it's a little bit higher, but basically the last 2 years, pork cutout's been 80, 82 cents a pound. So a composite value of a pig put into primals coming out of a plant is worth 80 cents a pound. It's literally worth less than chicken now. And I used to say we weren't influenced by what the commodity market is, but you can only have such a loyal customer when you're wholesaling. When they can get pork that's just dirt cheap, they don't have much of a choice if their whole business model's been destroyed by not having customers at the beginning of COVID and they're not financially stable yet. You lose some of those customers because they can buy really, really cheap pork. And we shouldn't have turned pork into, but the bigger issue in Austin, and I don't want to touch on it too long because Austin is much more of an expert on this than me, but 37 entities own 70% of the pigs in the United States. The farmers on farms don't even own the pigs on their farm anymore. We've watched as the independent hog farmer is gone in this country. Another statistic that I believe is scarier, though, 37 slaughterhouses, not 37 companies, because it's mostly 4 or 5 companies. 37 slaughterhouses in the United States slaughter 96% of the pigs. And my statistic that I like to throw around now, because USDA just dropped that volume of slaughter by various slaughter plants. Most people would consider small, very small slaughter plants would be 10,000 or less a year, 200 or less pigs a week. Most of what people use for direct marketing are those sizes slaughter plant. They slaughter 0.3% of the pigs, the volume of pigs in the United States. Yet we have one retailer in the United States that not only implies, but also tells everybody that almost all of their pork is coming from small producers through small slaughterhouses. They sell about 2% of the pigs, and there's only 0.3% of the pigs that are even slaughtered in that size plants. That, to me, frames the whole greenwashing and misleading labeling thing when you're telling the world one thing and it's not even mathematically possible.
How would you fix these labels? Like, I mean, is it something simple? Like, as you were talking, Greg, I kept thinking, should we just ban, like, if it's foreign, it can't be organic because we can't prove it? Or if it's foreign, it can't be grass-fed. Like, what would you do to kind of make these labels truly mean something?
You know, it's complex to fix because, first of all, you got to have legitimate standards and definitions on these things of what consumers' expectations are. So like Product of USA is an excellent example. The average consumer thinks that means that it was actually raised, slaughtered, processed in the United States. So you can't have deceptive definitions from the USDA to start with. And then you have to have some kind of enforcement. And that enforcement needs to be something that is as strict, if not stricter, on the big guys than it is on the little guys. Because it needs to represent the volume of production. And right now, the labeling, I know from personal fact, because I help other people with issues with dealing with USDA FSIS. Little producers getting stuff processed through small USDA shops have a hard time getting label approvals. And when you go look at the grocery stores, I don't think the big guys have a hard time getting label approvals. So somehow, that label approval process needs to be one that has some enforcement. I think it has to come through the Packer and Stockyards Administration. And my argument for it, Austin, is that there was a time frame when making sure that the weight on the animals, that the guy at the buying station or the auction wasn't setting his cigar butt on the end of the scale, so the weight was wrong. They weren't classing them wrong. They weren't jockeying who got paid for what. And there was a time frame when making sure that the producers actually got their check was the most important thing. Now the value proposition on those animals is something besides just their weight. And so I'd argue that portion up before the plant is the jurisdiction of Packer and Stockyards, and they're doing a horrible job. And then I'd argue that FSIS is doing a horrible job. They only require affidavits. And I don't know that I'm asking for third-party certification on everything, because the problem with that's a double-edged sword too. GAP system and lots of these other certifications, even organics, very, very cost prohibitive for little producers. Very, very cost prohibitive for producer groups that use a bunch of producers because they charge every single producer. The only affordable certifications are American grass-fed and animal welfare approved. The rest of them, none of the little guys can even get into those systems. So it's going to be hard to fix. But, first of all, they have to have a desire to actually start to fix it. And I thought their process that they went through for Product of USA at least showed that they had some desire to fix it. But they've done nothing since then on any of the other labels.
Yeah. Greg, you said something that was very telling. You said that hogs were 8 cents a pound on slaughter. What's a pound of pork cost in the marketplace? 6, 7, 8 bucks?
Yeah, the cutout got as low as, was running 80 cents. And the big margins in retail are to put just one adjective on that package, especially one meaningless adjective. And, they're probably paying 25 to 40% premium for it at wholesale. And then they're selling it for $6, $8, $10 a pound. So the margins, that's where their real margin in the meat retail is selling these greenwashed labels.
Yeah.
Austin, as long as there are 37 massive slaughterhouses that control access to retail and food service markets, they are setting the price for the hogs at or below cost to these massive hog confinements. And I know these hog confinement guys, I meet with them in Michigan State every year. They're being forced to race to the bottom and cut every tenth of a penny out of their production costs. And part of that is going to be automating the whole system. So I asked Temple Grandin at an event last year, I said, what do you think about raising 100,000 hogs in a confinement without any human contact? And she is aghast that human beings would raise animals for food and not husband those animals. But the race to the bottom on cost is directly related to how the packing slaughterhouses control access to retail. There's the answer to your question. That has to be undone. There has to be access to markets that don't depend on that slaughterhouse retailer collusion.
Say when you said the dining experience, let's talk about truth in menu. And Greg we walk into a restaurant and it says farm to table, this farmer or that farmer or this and that and the other thing. And when you do a little bit of a deep dive, I was in a resort area with my family this weekend and it said grass-fed beef on the menu. I questioned it and the kid came out and he goes, well, that's what they tell me to say. And
yeah, Carrie, me, you, and Mike, and my son Evan, I still remember. You want an interesting experience, and I still actually think someone ought to do a reality show, sending Mike Calicrate around for truth and labeling questions for the wait staff and the chefs at restaurants around the country. If you remember that, was it the Tampa article in around 2015? Farm to table got really, really trendy. And then somewhere along the lines, there's some really, really good farm to table chefs, but there's also somewhere along the line, some of them realized that, hey, there's a really good way to charge a premium here and not have to actually buy from farmers because it's inconvenient and it costs a lot to buy directly from farmers. And the whole thing got a little crazy, and I'm not sure that it ever really fixed. Maybe it's just as crazy. But if you remember that Tampa article where basically everything that they went and found that was claimed to be local in Tampa, none of it was. I almost feel like that in a way that article hurt us because I think that lots of people going out to eat now see all of these adjectives and see all of this stuff on the menu. And I think even the chefs that are very, very committed to farm to table have a hard time getting their customers to know that they're actually being truthful, because I think most people know that there's just so much deception in the marketplace. So I think it's difficult, and I think it's difficult for chefs, and I feel for them because it's difficult for chefs that pay 2 to 3 times the price for product that's placed down the road that's getting stuff off the back of the Cisco truck has the same description on their menu but is paying half the price. So how do you compete in that as a chef too? So I don't know how you fix all that.
We've got the problems and we've got the experts to point them out to us and talk about our food supply. And we've got a new administration, we've got a new Secretary of Ag, we've got Maha coming in right now. Is there any light on the horizon for any of you guys on changing things at USDA?
I think Secretary Rollins has got to sit down with some people besides the National Cattlemen's Beef Association and besides the American Farm Bureau. And there's nothing wrong with the Secretary of Agriculture that supports commodity agriculture. I think they should do that, and I think they always have. But they have to support niche regenerative agriculture also, and they got to support the small hobby operations. And they've done none of that. None of them have ever showed that they're going to do any of that. But she for sure hasn't showed that she's going to do any of that. Maha is very encouraging, but, I was obviously joking about my comment before because I haven't said this publicly, but I got to say this one publicly. Brooke and Bobby went out to that Hill County farm in Texas to do their first collaborative speech on Maha. And I think I might have been the only person in the country that noticed it. And I didn't say anything about it, but we got to start talking about it. When you do a 9-minute speech with the two of them talking about how we're going to make America healthy again, how we're going to get all the chemicals out of our food, how we're going to have an agriculture that transforms rural America, we're going to make farmers prosperous again and all that. And you put a damn John Deere chemical sprayer as the backdrop on a farm that's the 4th largest subsidy recipient in their county, there's a disconnect somewhere. So I'm not sure where the disconnect is, but I think they got to start talking to some different people in Washington, D.C., and maybe we can figure out where the disconnect is, and maybe we can get a little bit more positive traction for something besides the largest commodity producers in the status quo.
Austin, how we gonna fix it?
Make you the undersecretary for marketing regulatory programs. I mean, I'm a big believer in personnel. At some point, like I had no expectations for Rollins because of she's just always been a hack for oligarchs. And so my goal is to get people like Greg in positions of power.
Yeah.
I mean, that is, you can't convince someone like her to do the right thing. They're never going to do the right thing. People like Vilsack are lost causes. And to be frank, I mean, this isn't like a one-party thing. There's never been a good secretary in my lifetime.
I'm going to stay here. My goal before the election was to get Austin in that position because Austin would do a fabulous job. Yeah. And then I got to add, there's a couple other people on that were more connected than me to know who Secretary Kennedy's Maha Ag Committee was. And there were some really, really good names put forth. And my understanding, we got one deputy administrator in NRCS. We didn't get any other appointments. And, you know, like what Austin said, there's a huge number of appointments at USDA. I think we need either the secretary or deputy secretary, and I think we need 15 or 20 of the 80 or so of the most important appointments if we're actually going to change. And we got one that tells you where Maha's influence and where changing rural America is for me. So that, for me, they have some work to do if they want to show that they're supporting anything besides commodity agriculture and the status quo. They got my telephone number. I'm willing to talk to them. I give them a list of other people that they ought to talk to. So we ought to start meeting.
Yeah.
The two things just to add on to that real quick is the silver lining here with the Maha stuff to me is I was shocked at how big it was. When my book took off in that world and my sales just soared when it did. And it's, to me, I kind of view Maha as like different groups. There's like suburban Dallas housewives who really care what their kids eat. At the same time, too, it's been underappreciated. A lot of young men right now really care about what they eat. And that's a really new group that I don't think has been fully appreciated by this stuff. This just shows you that it's kind of like that story of the, bunch of blind people touching an elephant, describing a different thing, but they're describing the same thing. That's what's going on here. So there's something to be had here. Like some Teddy Roosevelt political figure is going to come along and realize there's a lot of political hate to be had here. These are foreign meat packers screwing people, screwing workers, screwing farmers, screwing rural America. Someone's going to do something. I mean, I look what happened with Lena Khan. I mean, it's so clear. A lot of people in that antitrust world worked really hard to get her appointed. President Biden appointed her. And you saw, I mean, like, she's a hero. I mean, whatever your politics are, you have Matt Gaetz praising her in the Wall Street Journal. And then you have Elizabeth Warren praising her. Like, the politics are here really weird, in which that actually excites me because I think things really happen in America when weird bedfellows get together. Like even going back to Chekhov's, you have Mike Lee of Utah working with Elizabeth Warren on this stuff. So I really do believe something will happen at some point. But like to Greg's point earlier, right now, I mean, the Barons win by writing us out. So you have to be mad. Greg is one of the most vocal people on Twitter. Like you have to put up a fight because that's what they're trying to do, essentially run out the clock.
And, Austin, people are starting to get this connection. And I think Maha is so empowering and it's got so many people behind it because I think that there's a lot of people now that see this the human health starts with soil health, which produces the correct produce, grass, fruits and vegetables, which turn produce the right animals and products that you feed to humans. And it's a holistic health. And people are starting to get that. But people are going to start to get really, really pissed off when they realize that our policy does nothing but just foot on the accelerator of the status quo. They did absolutely nothing for.
Well, look at Harris.
Yeah.
I will die on this hill. It's so clear that Vilsack contributed to Vice President Harris's loss.
Right.
Food prices mattered, and he did nothing. Right. And food price, people are being gouged, and they're right to feel it. I was told by my spouse I need to stop with my Vilsack rants. He undermined the vice president. Same thing's going to happen to Trump if they don't do anything in the next 3.5 years. Voters will call him out on it.
Right, right, and people are getting tired of the hypocrisy. Whichever tribe they land in, they're still getting really tired of the hypocrisy. And, we just go back and forth to, we're going to bring somebody with transformational change. That's every single president that we elect. And it's like at some point, we might actually get somebody that's going to give us transformational change. But so far, I'm hopeful, but so far I still don't see it out of this one yet.
Awesome. I think that I'm guardedly hopeful about state level politics. And just a quick story, which dovetails with what we're talking about, is people realizing the connection between nature and our health is not a connection. Nature is our health. And last August, Lois Kolkhorst, chief of staff, called me on noon on a Wednesday, and I said, I need you in Austin, Texas on Thursday morning. We're going to give you 20 minutes to talk about the connection between agriculture and human health. And this was a special session. That's Senator Kolkhorst is the chair of the Health Committee in Texas Legislature in the Senate. And she let me and 24 other people make this connection that if you are going to put pesticides into the food chain, if you're going to put antibiotics and hormones into the meat supply, it has an immediate demonstrable repercussion on a generation or two of Americans. And the connection here is that so many people are sick, especially with autoimmune and digestive related issues, that they're desperate for a solution. And it's only a very short couple of baby steps to understand that their food is making them sick. When Texas and Lois Kolkhorst can make that connection and make a big deal about it under the Maha or Make Texas Healthy Again banner, that gave me a tremendous amount of hope. Big Ag will push back. They'll have their wins, but the consumer makes the choice in the end. If they can afford better food, I think we're going to see that movement gain a lot of steam.
And I just want to add on to that. That's the beauty of America, is DC's always the last to know. This stuff always starts locally. The first anti-monopoly laws in the world came out of pissed off farmers in Iowa. Iowa did it, a few states copied it, and then a decade or two later, feds finally did something. I think what to Alan's point, what's going on in Texas is really fascinating. And that's the hope that's where I want to spend my energies these next few years, is have these proof of concepts at a state level. Because guess what? When you do stuff in Texas is big. It's a lot, it's like the California thing. Once these big states do something, that's where the markets go. They're trendsetters. And so focus on that stuff. The laboratories of democracy is what makes America, one of the big things, in my opinion.
The only other thing I would see is that how can the consumer get involved? What can the consumer do? I swear there's a grocery store here in Denver that has my picture in the meat department that says, don't talk to this woman. But it's the consumer feels that they don't matter in this equation, and we've got to figure out how to make them understand that they do matter. And
my big thing is schools. It's like, if you really care about this stuff, these farmers are moving a mile, man. They got too much on their plate. Same with school district directors. Pair them up. Pressure the school. The college is near you. Hey, you should be sourcing your pork, your beef, your whatever locally. Help them do it. Because first of all, this stuff costs more. This stuff is not subsidized to the same degree as this other stuff. Are our kids worth it? I think they are. I think our kids deserve more than Lunchables. I think all beef served in Texas should come from, grass-fed Texas beef. Why are we serving Amazon rainforest beef to Texas kids? First of all, that's good politics. You know what I mean? Lean into that. But I think this comes from pressuring schools and then helping farmers. It's just such a stabilizing income source for these folks.
The other thing too is that if you've ever been in a nursing home or assisted living,
God, they're awful. The food, sorry.
Here, these people have given their whole lives to supporting America, and they're being fed junk.
We have a very poor level of food, and it's got a bunch of hidden costs in the commodity system. We feed the institutional food a whole lower level than that. The kids, the elderly, and the military of our country get food that's not even fit to go into the commodity system. We are better as a nation than that. We should change that. But I'd like to just add and be really quick here, Alan. I think that you ought to visit farms, and lots of people don't have the time for that. So I'd argue that you should do that virtually. Follow the places that you buy food from, and also go on Google Earth or go on your satellite version of your maps. I don't think it takes a certification to be able to understand whether a farm is regenerative or not, or whether a farm is pasture raising animals, or whether it's just a bunch of confinement buildings. I think the average person without any training can tell that from a satellite map. But then search out, either buy directly from a farmer or search out those labels that actually have some meaning and buy them from a smaller retailer where you're actually getting what you think you're getting. Because your food dollars, you get to vote with your food dollars, and your food dollars do actually matter to farmers.
So Austin, you said something I'm going to gently challenge, which is that it's more expensive. And
Thank you.
since we deal with consumers face to face every day. The fact is that Greg's pork tastes better. Greg's pork is more nutritious. You can eat half as much and you're paying twice as much, eating half as much. That's the same price. And in fact, the whole world eats that way. It uses protein and fat to flavor food. One of the things that we have to avoid is the idea that the center of the plate is 6 ounces or 8 ounces of meat. Consumers need to rethink that and understand that they will be so much more satisfied and so much more nourished with a product like pastured pork or pastured beef.
Good point there. And just Carrie, to your point on nursing home stuff, I talk fast. So I've been doing a lot of book events in nursing homes in Iowa to kind of slow down. And I kid you not, after the residents, we were sitting around a table talking, and they were just telling me how awful the food, it was all Cisco food. Mm-hmm. And what they did in response is they pressured their administration to give the chef some money just to go to the farmer's market on Saturdays. Mm-hmm. Just because they wanted like some decent meal, because they were just kind of sick of eating the same. I mean, we all know it's like canned vegetables. It's that like, And it was that simple little thing where, first of all, the chef loved it. You know what I mean? Yeah. No one likes cooking with Cisco food. That like essentially go buy like what's in season in August in Iowa. Like it's such a simple little thing, but it's so easy to do. And it's such a powerful, like who isn't happy after a good meal, to Alan's point? Like the thing I'll never forget is at my wedding, my big thing was I wanted all Iowa meat, pasture. And my mom's one of 12, big Irish Catholic, and all my Iowa family couldn't believe how good our pork was. Like they're so used to junk, and it wasn't that much pork. You know what I mean? Like we had a bunch of different dishes going on, but it wasn't cooked fancy. Didn't have fancy sauces on. It was just like a good old fashioned pork. Yeah. And that's like, it just never forget now. The system we have now in America is radical. It is radical that we're serving kids Amazon rainforest beef. Yeah. So much of what we're talking about is the way the system used to be.
Yeah. If you look at it, the people that grow their own food and the people that buy food from people who grow their own food are eating well. It's the middle that isn't eating well. But thank you so much.
So I'd like to just add in, Austin, thanks for writing that book. I know it was a lot of work. I know you're working on a new one that's upcoming, and that's how change happens, getting that information out. But I can't do it. It takes a special person to put all that together, and I just really want to honor you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
We gave it away at our conference to all our speakers, and it was very well received. So we're going to do it again this year. All right, so we will wrap this up. We will edit and we will get back to you. And I thank you guys for taking an hour out of your day today. It took us forever to get everybody on the same page, but we're here. And Greg, you do have a tan.
I do?
Yeah.
Also, I just froze. So I missed all Alan's comments. So I look forward to hearing that in the edit.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you, guys. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye. Take care.
Stay cool.